This episode was sponsored by our patrons, Valerie LaPointe Lunn, Kim Hokinson, Julie Gray, Bree Smith, Siobhan Keenan, Robin Brown, Janelise Cannon, Valerie Jacobson, Heather McKinnon, Jamie Lang, Chantel Oliver, Jill Harrigan, Michaela Frew, Maria Sanchez, and Caitlin McTaggart. You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month to help make more episodes happen and get these episodes ad-free. Thank you so much for being our sponsors. We couldn't do it without you. Hi, Olivia.
Hi, Katie.
Today, I have for you an absolute swashbuckling tale.
Ooh.
We're going to Cape Cod for a story that is chock full of impossible events that really did happen.
My favorite kind.
In the golden age of piracy.
Yay!
Your favorite time.
It is.
This story has got the richest pirate in Western history, Black Sam Bellamy.
Uh-huh.
It's got Cape Cod's worst storm in history and the most disastrous shipwreck.
Oh, I know where we are.
Ha! And this whole story is so bonkers that most people decided it was a myth. But in our tale of impossible plot twists, it also has the dreamer, Barry Clifford, who, as a kid in the 1970s, heard the legends of Black Sam Bellamy's wrecked ship full of treasure off the coast of Cape Cod, and he believed that those tales were true. He went looking for the wreck, and of course,
He found it!
he found it. On the whole, it's a very male story, from the pirates to the team who found the wreck 280 years later. Except there's a woman right at the heart of all of it, and she turns out to be the cause of this whole entire episode of human history. Maria Hallett, also pronounced Maria Hallett. She's usually presented as a minor footnote in this story, but I want to put her front and center and see the whole event from her point of view.
Cool.
And I've been deeply enjoying this shift in perspective on pirates. Seeing the pirates from the perspective of the woman who got left behind. What is it about pirates? Why are they so fascinating?
Well, I think, first of all, costuming.
Yes!
I mean, if you want to be a beloved historical trope, you need a good costume.
And they absolutely win, don't they?
And we love a good outlaw that we can convince ourselves has a heart of gold.
Yes.
Anti-capitalism.
Oh, it's so huge today, right? Our stories of piracy and treasure, I think, or at least I thought, were really stories about freedom and greed and desperation. And that is a universal story. But looking at the story from the perspective of Maria Hallett, this story takes all of those tropes and twists them around. And it's a story about love, plain and simple. It's about paying whatever price it takes to be together. And we have scant documentary evidence of Maria, but we do have a wealth of oral history, and we have a ghost. So,
there we go.
we get
And
to
if Barry Clifford's success has taught us anything, it's that
Yes.
oral history is not to be poo-pooed.
Exactly. So, we get to explore the whole field of history itself. What gets recorded, what gets consigned to myth, who gets remembered, and why. And I will present you with all that evidence and all the oral traditions, and you get to decide who was Maria Hallett, and even more excitingly, how did it all end? I'm Katie Nelson.
And I'm Olivia Mickle.
And this is What's Her Name?
Fascinating women you've never heard of.
Our guide for this adventure is Stephanie Clements, who is from Cape Cod and a guide at the Real Pirates Museum in Salem, Massachusetts.
Hooray!
Oh, sure. So my name is Stephanie Clements. I'm a docent at Real Pirates in Salem, Massachusetts.
She took our group through the museum on our Lost Women of New England tour. Do you remember?
Yeah, speaking of fabulous costuming.
Exactly. Dressed as the most fabulous pirate. Like any classic love story, it begins with love at first sight.
Aww.
It's the year 1715, and our heroine is Maria Hallett. She's probably about 15, born and raised on Cape Cod. And it's only been 22 years since the Salem witch trials rocked the whole of Massachusetts. And
wow.
Yeah, it's the same world.
Wow, I hadn't done that math.
So Cape Cod, for those who aren't familiar, it's a sort of big sandy hook that reaches out into the Atlantic from Massachusetts. And in 1715, it's a remote Puritan farming and fishing town. Tourists and millionaires haven't discovered it yet.
My impression of what she was like, now this is just going on my own feeling, is that she probably was from a fairly wealthy family, that she was the daughter of wealthy farmers. Was a little bit like she was being stifled, that she was really kind of a little wild and wanted to have fun. I'm from Cape Cod, so I know what it's like. She just didn't want to be stuck in that little peninsula, and she just wanted she was looking for excitement. That's what I really think of her. And just so you know, it's highly unlikely that her name was really Maria. It was probably something like that, but Maria is a very Christian name. This was a Puritan settlement. We think it was either Mary or Mariah, and they're just calling her Maria. Maria, that makes the most sense to me.
So I'll call her Mariah. She's typically called Maria. Either one is fine. I'm sure she won't be offended. She's our heroine. Our hero, of course, is Sam Bellamy, who was from Devon, England. And like 40,000 other British soldiers, in 1714 he found himself suddenly unemployed when Queen Anne's War, which is also called the War of the Spanish Succession, which is a way lamer name than Queen Anne's War. The war ended, they're all out of a job. So he sailed to America, as you do.
She was looking for excitement, and he was the excitement. And that's my feeling, is that she was a little bit wild. Bellamy appealed to her. She was like 10 years younger than he was, 15, and she was so beautiful.
How did they meet? You ready? Take your pick. I have two options for you.
All right.
Spring 1715 in Wellfleet. And Wellfleet is this little town in the middle of that hook of Cape Cod. Maria Hallett is sitting in the only place she can find some peace and quiet, the town cemetery.
I love her already.
Sam Bellamy is passing by the cemetery when he hears this beautiful voice singing. He follows the sound, and there sits a beautiful girl with flaxen hair underneath a tree bursting with apple blossoms. And when he speaks to her, she looks up with her deep blue eyes, and she sees this handsome 24-year-old with these thick, black, unruly curls. Love at first sight.
Some people say that he met her and the sun was shining, her hair was all gold, he wanted to marry her.
Okay, so already the symbolism here is marvelous. They met in a cemetery where apple blossoms are overflowing. Amazing. Apple blossoms, 5-pointed star, sometimes the symbol of the divine feminine, but they're also the symbol of peace, love, and good fortune, which I don't want to spoil anything. It's a little bit ironic.
Also, don't know if this is doing anything, but apples, Eve.
Oh, of course.
Either
yes.
the
woman
woman
who
that
causes
launches humanity out into the beautiful, bold future of freedom, or the one that dooms humanity to destruction.
Yes. Oh, it's so perfect. Okay, so That's your option 1, wonderfully symbolic and in a cemetery. Option 2, if you want more swashbuckle in your tale, a tavern.
Other people said they own this tavern in town. That's how he met her.
This is Great Island Tavern, or some people say it's Higgins Tavern, but Great Island Tavern seems more likely. This tavern is a ramshackle building on the edge of the Atlantic. It's cut off from land at high tide. I mean, if you wanted your tavern to be accessible to customers, this is exactly the opposite of a good location. But this tavern is positively bustling. Why? Any ideas?
Because your customers are not arriving by land. They are arriving on boats.
Because your customers are?
Because they're pirates.
They're pirates and smugglers. Folks are loading and unloading all kinds of stolen goods. And we can't prove it for sure, but it's quite possible that the owner of Great Island Tavern was a relative of Sam Bellamy. And in this version of the story, Maria Hallett worked at the tavern. They meet. It's true love. But her parents do not approve.
And her family just didn't approve of him. They wanted her to marry well.
No unemployed sailor who works at a smuggler's tavern will do for their
Then why
daughter.
is their daughter working at a smuggler's tavern?
Yeah, there's some plot holes in this. It doesn't really make sense how or why she would be there, unless she's a free spirit who goes there of her own free will. Maria and Sam are desperate. How can we get Sam the money and status he needs to earn her parents' approval? And in July 1715, the universe hands them a big chance. The news is all over the colonies. It's amazing that this really happened. A fleet of Spanish treasure ships, 11 ships, literally jammed with silver and gold, have wrecked in a hurricane off the coast of Florida. Whoever gets there first is rich.
Sam Bellamy's get-rich-quick plan. So he hooked up with a man named Palsgrave Williams, but Sam Bellamy and Palsgrave Williams raced down there.
Palsgrave Williams is a jeweler and apparently an adventurer because he went along as Sam's first mate.
So Sam Bellamy had the navigational skills and Palsgrave Williams had the money, the financial backing.
This was a massive financial risk they had to pay for the ship and the crew and everything, and when they got there, they were too late.
Sam turns pirate. He hooks up with Benjamin Hornigold. Hornigold is a very famous pirate during the golden age of piracy, and he's basically Sam Bellamy's mentor, and he rises through the ranks really, really quickly.
We can track Sam's rise through the pirate ranks through the records of pirate criminal trials later, and from the famous General History of the Pirates, which was written just a couple decades later, which is not 100% reliable, but it's the best we got. We don't have anything directly from Sam himself, but as we shall see, thanks to Barry Clifford, we do have all the contents of his flagship, the Widda. And among the hundreds and thousands of items we found in the wreck were pens, seals, and wax for mailing letters. They definitely wrote letters. So, I'm giving myself permission to imagine that Sam sent letters home to Maria.
Yeah,
why wouldn't he?
Of course.
It's true love. She's the reason he's out there. So, we're going to learn of his exploits as Maria would have heard it from letters. And in these letters, we are hearing the famed words of Sam Bellamy as recorded in the General History of Pirates. So this is as close as we can get to the real source.
My dear Maria, it may seem insanity, but this is the fastest way to make my fortune and return to you. I've fallen in with Benjamin Hornigold himself. If I remain focused and careful, I can see my way to succeed, even rise in rank among his rogue crew. The pirates aren't what I once feared, nor was led to believe. A spirit of equality prevails. I am as free as a prince, and I have as much authority to make war on the whole world as he who has 100 sail of ships at sea and an army of 100,000 men in the field. And this my conscience tells me. I will make my fortune and return to you, Sam.
Oh, blow, my boys, for I love to hear you. Blow, boys, blow. Oh, blow, my boys, for I love to hear you. Blow, my bully boys, blow. Oh, we ain't the ship dropping down the river. Blow, boys, blow. Yes, he ain't the ship dropping down the river. Blow, my bully boys, blow.
So it always really shocks people to learn how progressive they were. The pirates even had their own form of workman's compensation. So if you were injured in battle and you lost an arm, that would be worth a certain amount. A right arm was worth the most because most people are right-handed. An eye would be worth another amount.
So, Sam Bellamy has signed the articles, and he's pirating under the absolute legend Benjamin Hornigold, alongside this other newcomer by the name of Edward Teach, who of course will become Blackbeard.
Now, we have our own version of the articles right here, so you can sign if you want, and some people give themselves a pirate name, so you can do that. That's right there. So, like, for instance, typical articles would be things like no stealing the loot, no fighting with another pirate. If you had a problem with one of your crewmates, you're supposed to take it ashore. No drinking above deck after a certain hour, things like that.
But what of the poor women left behind?
Yeah.
Just waiting and watching for their love to come home. I actually managed to find this really old folk song that women would sing as they awaited their love to come back to them.
Blow the wind southerly, southerly, southerly. Blow the wind south o'er the bonny blue sea. Blow the wind southerly, southerly, southerly. Blow, bonny breeze, my lover to me.
He can send news home to Maria, but once he goes pirate, Maria has no way of reaching him. So she can't tell him what's going on back home, and it's not good.
Maria, so he went off to sea. She's heartbroken.
And as some weeks pass, she faces the fact that she's pregnant.
Pregnant, teenager, not married.
In a Puritan society that has a passion for executing sinners by hanging.
Not great.
Not great. So she keeps it a secret as long as she possibly can. Her belly's growing, and she is just willing Sam to come back, because if he returns with his fortune, it will make it all okay.
Blow, bonny breeze, and bring him safe home. I stood by the lighthouse the last time we parted, till darkness came down o'er the deep rolling sea, and no longer I saw the bright bark of my lover. Blow, bonny breeze, and bring him to me.
Now, this is a society that absolutely believes in witchcraft. Everybody. So, putting myself in her 15-year-old shoes, I'm wondering not if she turned to witchcraft, but when. I can imagine I would be asking myself things like, is there a spell to make this baby go away? Or how about, is there a spell to just make it grow slower? You know, is there some way to bring his ship home faster? Can I conjure a storm that will bring him home?
I was going to say the proximity to the Salem witch trials makes her nickname less charming and more ominous.
Yes. What 15-year-old wouldn't?
Yeah.
In a situation that's that
You're
desperate.
doing anything you can.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to kill you anyway,
Yeah.
so try whatever you can try.
Blow, bonny breeze, and bring him to me.
And apparently it's not working, and instead she gets wild news from Sam.
Maria, no time to write, but the short of it is, we shall become legendary. I ordered the men under my command to row hard in pursuit of a French ship, and as we approached, I conceived a wild plot. We stripped off all our clothing, all in our skins and buff, with naught but our cutlasses and pistols. The French, upon seeing us, could not believe what they saw. Their confusion was our great advantage. "What have you come for?" shouted one of the Frenchmen. "For your ship, what do you think?" I replied. And with a rousing "one and all," we boarded the vessel. They put up little defense, for we let it be known that we are Robin Hood's men, and have no quarrel with sailors, but with the rich merchants who profit on the backs of others. Those who do not resist go unmolested. I see the world clearly now. I have no patience for the sniveling puppies who allow their superiors to kick them about deck. They pin their faith upon a pimp of a parson who neither practices nor believes what he puts upon the chuckle-headed fools he preaches to. Is it not better to be a pirate than to sneak after the asses of these villains for employment? We captured a hold of fine linen and 28,500 pieces of eight. My fortune grows. Keep faith, Sam.
That's what made him famous. He had all his men stripped naked, and the French were so like, what is this, that it bought them the time to take the whole ship. She keeps faith. She waits. And she successfully hides the pregnancy with, and I guess with early 18th century dresses. I can see how it would have been possible that she successfully hides it, but these are months of fear and agony for her. Meanwhile, Benjamin Hornigold, he was a privateer to the end, and he always refused to attack British ships. But Sam Bellamy and so many others, they had been British soldiers. They had been so poorly treated by the British military that they resented his respect for Britain.
Now, the only problem with Hornigold is that he would not attack an English ship out of allegiance to England. And none of them had that sort of allegiance at all. Mostly because they wanted to be able to plunder any ship they wanted, but they also felt very, very betrayed by English. Most of them had either been sailors in the Royal Navy or in the Merchant Marines, and they weren't treated well. So oftentimes the captains were very, very abusive. They would be fed, like, I'm not kidding, bread full of maggots. They would be paid like paltry amounts, if at all. And it's for this reason that they eventually voted out Hornigold as captain, and they made Bellamy their captain. So he's deposed, humiliated, and Sam Bellamy becomes the captain. And when Hornigold left, Blackbeard went with him.
Hornigold and Blackbeard, be gone. Now we can really ramp up this treasure hunt and get rich as quick as we can.
My dear Maria, I hope and trust that you are well. I have secured a tidy sum for us to live by, but more than that, I am become captain. Captain Black Sam Bellamy, so it seems, and you may soon hear tales of me, for the tales seem to reach every shore before I do. I aim to press as hard and as fast as I can to secure the fortune that will secure all these men and you. I am Robin Hood of the seas, and I say damn those who stand for oppression. And damn the sneaking puppies who are willing to submit to be governed by laws which rich men have made for their own security. Damn the cowardly whelps for a pack of crafty rascals. And damn those who serve them, a parcel of hen-hearted numbskulls. They vilify us, the scoundrels do, when there is only this difference. They rob the poor under the cover of law, forsooth, and we plunder the rich under the protection of our own courage. Every moment, I am looking for the final prize that will secure all of us for life. All these good men now under my command, and you and I, Sam.
come on over here and I'll show you the cannonballs. These, they look like weights, but these are actually cannonballs. These are called bar shots. So if we put those in a cannon and you fire them, they spin. And they're used to take down the mass. So again, the pirates, are always presented as being these violent, murderous brutes, which they could be. They really didn't want to harm anyone. That just wasn't their goal. Sam Bellamy was the master of intimidation, of getting people to surrender. So if they would try to take a ship with minimal violence so that they didn't lose any crew members, and also they really just wanted to get the ship to surrender as quickly as they could because they wanted the ship. They wanted the ship intact. One of the things that they would do is they would separate the captain from the crew and they would interrogate the crew. Did your captain treat you well? What happened? If they didn't get treated well, then the captain was in for it. But like I said, Sam Bellamy was pretty peaceful. They called him the Robin Hood of the seas.
Meanwhile, Maria could not stop time, and the baby arrived. And they say she found a remote hut on the coast of Wellfleet and had the baby all alone. No one knew. It was a boy, and she named him Sam, of course.
And they say she has her baby, and she doesn't want people to know that she has this child. So whenever she goes out, she puts the baby in a barn and covers him with hay.
And then she would visit every few hours to feed him. So sad. One day, she returns to the barn, but she's met by John Knowles, who's the man who owns the barn, and he's standing there holding this newborn that is blue in the face, and he's suffocated in the hay. Her baby is dead, and her secret is out.
The townspeople find out about this, and they're convinced that she's committed infanticide. Okay? She killed her own baby. And she ends up in jail, and between like this trauma and then losing Sam Bellamy, she goes crazy. So the people of Wellfleet start calling her the witch of Wellfleet.
She becomes the Witch of Wellfleet. Ugh, what a name.
And they just say she was so just traumatized from everything that happened. And then one of the jailers actually feels sorry for her, lets her out at night. They see her roaming the dunes.
And she lives in that hut on the cliff, overlooking the water, where she waits and watches for her lover to return. And they say that to escape the scorn of the community, she only comes out at night and stares out to the sea. It's not over yet. I mean, it's horrific. But she just has to wait it out till he returns. Then he'll take her away, and they could start a fresh new life. Like, nobody has to know who they were in the past. So she's still in that desperation, just waiting. Please, please, just come home safe.
Maria, may the wind and weather be with us. I told the men, lads, we've gotten enough. It's time to go home. Watch for me on the horizon. Sam.
Sam has amassed the richest treasure hoard any pirate this side of India ever captured. He's robbed about 50 ships, which equates to one every 2 weeks. And in spite of all the myths we have about the lure of gold, those words in his letter, those are his actual words. Lads, we've gotten enough. It's time to go home.
Yeah, that really speaks to this. There was a different agenda. There was a different goal here.
Yes, exactly. I think it says so much about what he was doing and why. And that there's so many myths about how once you pursue gold, you become consumed with greed and it will never end. But it looks like Sam Bellamy was like, there we go. I've got enough for all these men and I've got enough for my lady love and we're done now. Amazing.
We're homeward bound this very day. Goodbye, fare you well. Goodbye, fare you well. We're homeward bound this very day. Around, my boy, we're homeward bound.
He was almost there. He was approaching Cape Cod, literally within sight of Wellfleet, when the weather changed. It was the perfect storm, the most freakish combination of weather systems Cape Cod has ever seen. It was April, so presumably the apple blossoms were in bloom again. And an Arctic storm from Canada swept down to meet this warm front which was rushing up from the Caribbean, and suddenly this thick fog set in. The smell in the air changed. It was so sudden and so extreme that some people find it hard to believe it was a coincidence.
There's another story, which I just don't believe this one. Is that when he went off to sea, she was so upset about it that she cursed his ship.
In her agony, if she was a witch, did she conjure the storm? Did she make that warm air rush up from the Caribbean? Did she drive his ship back home a little too well?
Now, the ship literally went down right near her house. He didn't know that was where she would have been at that point. You could almost say that his love for her caused the ship to go down because he wanted to show her what he had made of himself.
The thing about Cape Cod is it's a ship graveyard. By some estimates, 6,000 ships lie wrecked off of its shores. And it's not a big cape. Like, that's about 100 ships per mile off the coast of Cape Cod. And that's because there are these hidden sandbars underwater. And they're constantly shifting. Suddenly, you're just flying along at a quick pace and you slam into land that wasn't there before. And in this storm, the winds are gusting 80, 100 miles per hour. And so the more Sam Bellamy tries to steer out to sea, the more he's pushed toward the land. He knows that it's over. And the folks on Cape Cod, Maria included, would have heard and felt and smelled that storm building. And as night falls, they would have looked out to sea and seen the lantern on a ship that is just off the coast. They knew this ship was doomed. Did Maria know who was aboard? She's the Witch of Wellfleet. I think she knows. But there are two different versions where she does and she doesn't know. Here's the account of the wreck from Barry Clifford's book, Expedition Widda. Expedition Widda by Barry Clifford with Paul Perry. In a split second, the deck became an anthill of chaos. The helmsman was joined by another crewman, because to steer in a storm like this would require more strength than one man has. Together, they pulled on the wheel hard and tried to change the ship's direction. Sailors climbed the foremast and struggled to trim the sails while deckhands grabbed loose ropes and secured them to stays, since a rope swinging in a gale is a deadly weapon. For a few moments, they thought their hard work had turned them out to sea. Then, through the howl of the storm, someone heard the waves slapping on the shoreline, and the cry of "Breakers! Breakers!" went up again. Frenzy and fear became the order of the day. With a deep knowledge of the sea and the will to survive, the pirates began to act on their own, as they had in so many other desperate situations, deeply frightened but steadfastly professional. "Drop the main anchor!" shouted Bellamy. The pirates knew that this desperate measure, called club hauling, was meant to turn the ship around so she could face the waves and avoid being capsized. The Widow began a slow turn toward the wind, taking thousands of tons of water over the gunwales as she was swept by 40-foot waves. Many of the 148 men on board must have been swept over the side at this point. The ones who weren't had probably taken refuge in the holds or were clinging desperately to the rigging, where the wind was colder than the 40-degree water. Still, the ship turned. As she did, there must have been hope among those on board that they could face into the storm all night long and somehow survive until morning. Then came the fateful bump. The stern had run aground, and the ship could turn no more. Within 15 minutes of striking land, the mainmast was snipped off and floated free. Then, with nothing left to keep her upright, the ship began to roll upside down. Pirates were crushed as cannons and goods stored below came crashing through the decks. Those who could swam, but in water so cold there were few who could make it the 500 feet to shore. The ones who did froze to death, trying to climb the steep sand cliffs. In a moment, 144 pirates were dead or missing. It was here, virtually at Maria Hallett's doorstep, that the Widow crashed that perilous night. What did she see? If she was there, as all legends say she was, she arose that morning to a scene of incredible carnage. Perhaps she stood on the cliffs and looked down at the dozens of sailors who had been swept ashore and were now floating like rag dolls in the frothy, storm-churned surf. In front of her, the Widow would have been upside down, its oak hull protruding from the ocean like a turtle's shell.
So come on over here. So these are all navigational tools. So this is a sounding weight. The last time they used that was the night the ship went down, April 26th into the 27th of 1717. So they would drop this in the water to test the depths of the water. And then these navigational tools, we think these all date back to like the 1500s, so King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella era, which just tells you these were all stolen, captured from year to year until they ended up on Bellamy's ship and then went down in 1717 until Barry Clifford uncovered them in the 80s. This is an actual anchor. It was one of two anchors that was uncovered from the Widow wreck. Sam Bellamy tried desperately to save the Widow, and so he dropped the anchor. But I mean, the waves were like over 30 feet, just spilling above deck, and there was nothing that he could do. When the ship wrecked, there were like 104 bodies that washed ashore, and the Cape Codders, to them, to have a shipwreck and stuff start washing ashore, they thought it was great. So they picked their 104 bodies washed ashore. And I don't know if you know this, but pirates were known to sew gold and jewels into their clothes, which probably made them not able to swim anyway. And so they washed ashore and they picked them clean. And the 104 bodies that washed ashore were buried. So I'm just saying they weren't marked, so they don't know what. So I'm just saying he could have been among the 104 bodies that washed ashore. No one knows. They never found his body.
What happened next? I have 3 options for you. Are you ready?
Yes.
You choose the ending. Option 1. When she learned the identity of the wreck the next day, she went hunting for Sam's body all along the shore. She never found him. And after that, she went well and truly mad. And then, it's so poetic, she became obsessed with sewing apple blossoms onto a hyacinth blue dress. And as soon as she was finished, she donned the dress, walked to the cliff, slit her own throat, and leapt into the sea.
Ooh. Oh.
Okay, option 2. Of the few pirates who survived the wreck, we know there was 2 who survived the wreck. One of them was John Julian, and he found Maria out of loyalty to Sam. He told her the news, and he gave her some of the treasure. And from that, she lived in comfort to her dying day. She never went anywhere except on a nightly walk along the shore, gazing out to sea as if waiting for someone. Okay, and option 3. This is by far the most popular one in the oral tradition. And this is our happy ending. In option 3, Sam survived the wreck, found his way to Maria, and together they disappeared to live happily ever after with as much money as they needed to start a new life and a new identity somewhere else. Which would you like?
Well, obviously I like that one best. Except
Me too.
It ruins
What?
the ghost story.
It does, yeah. She would not be haunting the coast of Wellfleet if she went off and lived happily ever after. Well, the ghost could be...
It could be the kind of ghost that is just the worn-out carpet on the fabric of space-time. And it's just past Maria walking the cliffs as she did every night, waiting for Sam.
It's the waiting Maria,
Yeah.
yes.
And the real Maria went off and lived happily ever after, but the fabric of space-time is worn out in the groove. That's what I'm going with.
Okay.
That way we get both.
Okay.
Is there any actual evidence of any of it?
Of any of these? Sort of. We'll have little bits of evidence. Here's what we got.
I mean, to be clear, I'm on the side of oral history is evidence, but is there other evidence?
Yes. We do have a little bit. Okay, so for option 1, which is she goes mad and kills herself, we have some random specific details. It's said that a girl named Thankful Knowles, great name, daughter of John Knowles, who owned the hay barn where she was keeping her baby. Thankful Knowles was said to have found Maria's body at the foot of the cliff and said that she found her with her eyes shining, her neck slit, and a dagger in her hand. And I suppose the ghost stories would maybe be a sort of evidence. There are even people who claim to have seen the ghostly woman with flaxen hair in a hyacinth blue dress. And others say that they hear her weeping and moaning and searching on the shore for the body of her love. So that's evidence for option 1. Option 2 evidence, this one's interesting. This is the option where John Julian gives her some of the treasure. She lives in comfort for the rest of her days. In the public record office of Barnstable County is a will of one Maria Hallett, dating to April 19th, 1734. We don't know if this is our Maria Hallett. If so, she would have died in her 40s, a spinster. And she left her estate to her siblings. This will lists all of the possessions of this Maria Hallett, specifying these possessions are going to go to this sibling and these possessions are going to go to this sibling. But it specifies that one item should go with her to her grave, and it is a string of precious gold beads. Nothing in the will tells us where this gold came from, but some people are like, those are bits of gold from John Julian. So there's that. Option 3, happily ever after. No evidence at all, except the wealth of oral tradition.
My coworkers think that she may have lived, that she was among people, not knowing that it was Bellamy's ship that went down, but they were trying to help people and recover the wreck. And he likes to think that she ran into Sam. And they took off and lived happily ever after, because his goal or dream when he was coming back is he wanted to start his own little colony, like up in Nova Scotia or somewhere.
Well, you would make sure there wasn't evidence if you were disappearing.
So the lack of evidence really is evidence.
You might also spread rumors about your own death if you were about to run off with the pirate to make sure nobody realizes he survived.
Yes. Okay, and if she's really the Witch of Wellfleet and she has brought this ship to her shores supernaturally, then she could control the water and she could save Sam from the wreck, right?
Obviously.
She could have the waves deliver him to her, and he's got, I don't know, some treasure in his pocket, and then they live happily ever after.
And she's chosen that barn because she knows Thankful Knowles. They're friends, and she has, said,
oh, she plants the
I'm
story.
going to hide my baby in your barn. Please help me make sure no one finds it. And then when she's running off, she says, please tell everyone you found me dead.
I really like that. And I like the symbolism that her name is Thankful. That's wonderful. And I really like the idea of a pirate and a witch combining powers. These are two great American stories.
The icons
combined into one.
Of 18th century America. Yep, I'm doing that. I am combining all the best parts of all the stories to create the way I want it to have gone and also give myself the ghost story. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, and you can even keep the ghost. That's nice. There is a fascinating ghost story at the very end of Barry Clifford's book. And he says, I just have to tell this. I don't know what it means, but I feel like I can't leave it out. And it's pretty weird. And see if you can reconcile this with your combo solution. So they would hang out in this particular tavern after they would go out and dive the wreck every day. And one night, the owner of the tavern was like, whoa, something really weird just happened. This guy who was dining all alone over there, he went to the bathroom, he came out white as a sheet, completely panicked. He just handed him his card. And as they were processing his card, they were like, sorry, you okay? What's happened? And he said that people are going to think he's crazy, but he just met the ghost of a woman in the bathroom. And he was so freaked out, he just had to leave. So he just raced out of there. And then when they looked at the receipt that he had signed from paying his bill, his last name was Bellamy.
Come on.
And Barry Clifford said, we have the receipt. I think they have the receipt in the museum.
That's amazing.
Well, this is part of the story. Yeah. So does that jive with your whole plot?
No, but I don't care. It's awesome.
She's still waiting for him, and she thought he was it.
Oh.
Pretty cool.
It's Mariah's mother who's being punished for kicking out her child.
Ooh.
See, I can make anything
you can make it
turn
fit.
out the way I want it.
Centuries passed, and the story of the Witch of Wellfleet and Black Sam Bellamy and even his wrecked ship, the Widda, passed into legend. And in 1984, Barry Clifford, this wild dreamer, he went searching for the mythical pirate ship where it was supposed to have wrecked within sight of Wellfleet. He's like, here's where I think Mariah's hut was, and we know she could see it, so it's gotta be somewhere there. And if it existed, it would be the richest pirate treasure hoard in the Western world. And of course, all the academics sneered at the thought of someone believing it could be real. Please, there are stories like this stretching the length of the Atlantic. Don't be ridiculous. But of course, he found it.
There it was.
Right there, where he thought it would be, buried under 20 feet of shifting sand.
And so now we'll make our way into the treasure room. This is full of pieces of 8 Spanish reals. So there are 500 pieces of 8. And the reason why the silver is so jagged is because the pirates would cut them with their knives. These right here, we let you touch them. You can touch the pieces of 8. So this is one of the only museums in the world that lets you touch some of their artifacts, and they're most expensive at that, right? So the reason why they're called pieces of 8 is they would have these bigger ingots and they would cut a piece of it. So like if they went into a tavern and they wanted to get a drink, they would cut a piece of it, and that's why it's a piece of 8. Just like a quarter is a quarter of a dollar, it's the same mentality. But since Sam Bellamy and Maria Hallett is a romance, I'll go back to the little romantic side. So one of the things that the pirates would normally do with their pieces of 8, which I think is adorable, like see how this is cut almost like a teardrop? So if a pirate went into a tavern and saw a woman they liked, they would cut it into a shape of a heart and sit it down the bar. Isn't that more romantic than buying a drink?
40 years later, they're still bringing up artifacts from the wreck.
So they've only uncovered 20% of the wreck so far. So it's an active dive. So they're constantly bringing up more objects from the ocean floor.
And the amazing thing to me is that the sandbank that preserved it, it's almost like a tomb because no oxygen could get in there. They're just so perfectly preserved. I love that because it's the sand that destroyed it, that buried it, also preserved it.
These artifacts right here, these are all things that were found. You have buckles, cufflinks, rosette buttons. Now, Maria Hallett. So this is like everybody's favorite artifact over here. So the thing with Maria Hallett, in some of the history, that when Bellamy went off to sea, that she gave him a teapot and a woman's hair ribbon. And that's one of the things that they found in the captain's quarters wrapped around a gun was this hair ribbon. Yeah, so that's right there. So this is what authenticates Maria Hallett. And they said that the ribbon was made with rose and thistles in it, and that has rose and thistles.
Are you serious?
So the first time I ever heard this story, and it was before I worked here, I got chills when I heard that.
Even after he was turning up tons and tons of treasure, literally hundreds of thousands of artifacts, still non-believers, especially the director of archaeology at the Peabody Essex Museum in Salem, was like, you can't prove, this is no way. And so he's like, hey, what would it take for you to actually believe? Oh, it would take something with the ship's actual name on it. And so how do they know for sure that this is absolutely without a doubt Black Sam Bellamy's famed pirate ship?
Because they found the bell.
The bell. Says the widow.
Take that.
Take that, ye doubters. I just love every time there's an example of oral history preserving a truth that academia refuses to believe.
Yep.
I just love it. I eat it up. I love it so much.
Doubt at your peril, snobs.
There's a reason stories persist. The sands of time bury the past, but they also preserve it for those who are persistent and curious. So, there you have it, a tale of greed and desperation and death and doom, but all for love. All for love.
And it is
So-
freedom, too. It's just a different kind of freedom.
Yes, inspired by and made possible by love. So, methinks, maybe mystics are right. And even in our most epic tales of pirates and treasure hunts and the lure of gold, could it be that even in these stories, at the root of it all is love?
Love.
thanks to Stephanie Clements and the Real Pirates Museum in Salem, Massachusetts. If you want to learn more about the wreck of the Witta, we've got book recommendations on our website, What'sHerNamePodcast.com, or you can visit the Witta Museum on Cape Cod or the Real Pirates Museum in Salem. Sam Bellamy was voiced by Thad Weiland, and the vintage recording of Blow the Wind Southerly was performed by Ann Norman. Blow Boys Blow was recorded by A. Wilkins for the Library of Congress, and Goodbye Fare You Well by Alex Barr for the Library of Congress. Additional music was generously shared by the Mini Vandals, Cooper Cannell, Brian Bolger, Patrick Patricios, Wayne Jones, Jesse Gallagher, Jimena Contreras, and Daniel Foster Smith. Be sure to check out our tours on our website, What'sHerNamePodcast.com, because we will be going back to Salem in the future. Thank you so much for donating. Thanks for listening.